For those who do not know me, my name is Louis Michel. I'm the newly appointed Dean of the School of Business. I've been chair before that. So I have been working for Birmingham University forever, which means that I've been around for 22 years. And we have made a lot of changes with the connection of the School of Business with this community. And tonight we are very pleased to welcome the CEO of the business, who has been helping supporting the School of Business for many years. So I'm going to introduce him to a couple of questions, if you allow me to. His name is
Curtis Letniak.
Yeah, it's on the poster. And he is the CEO of
Spyder Controls Corp.
Spyder. How long has your business been supporting our School of Business here at campus?
I mean, directly at least 15 years.
At least 15 years. By providing internship opportunities, we have several students. And tonight there was one who could not stay, but who came here. He said, well, I would like to see. That's Anton Lozo, who has been working for Spyder Control. And you have been providing internship opportunities for students to go and use data from your business for their major class projects. And I want to thank you for that. Not only thanking you for being here, but thank you for providing that. So what does Spyder Control do as an example?
Okay, so we design and manufacture electronic controls for things that move. Vehicles, boats, equipment, things that would move and accomplish work and things like that. So, yeah, different electronic.
So where does the name Spyder?
It's a name that we wanted that would stick in someone's mind, not just like ABC Electronics or something like that. So we chose that name. A lot of the little chips that we work with look like a spider, you know, the things on a circuit board. And so, I mean, I don't know that there's a real good answer.
Okay, so where is I know where it is at, but for our audience, where is Spyder Control located?
So we have 3 locations, but our main office is just a block away here. There's a building north here, about a block, that kind of is just the opposite of the campus maintenance building there, called the Corp Business Center. And it used to be a furniture factory. Actually, when I went to school here, I worked in the furniture factory there, cutting fabric. I was able to get out of some of my classes and exams working there. And so anyway, ended up now owning part of the building there.
All right. Yeah. You were a Berman alumnus?
I went to Berkeley. I didn't graduate from Berkeley, but I went to PAA and graduated from there. So that's my time.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to welcome you back. This is home for you.
Yeah.
And we're pleased to have you. And you're going to share some business insights with our students. And as you're presenting, you might see them taking notes.
Sure.
Because they have to learn to tell us what they learned from your presentation.
Okay.
So thank you very much for supporting the School of Business, and thank you for being here with us as our speaker tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mr. Letniak.
Well, thank you. Before I start out, maybe with a few thoughts to share, I just would like to maybe ask by show of hands, how many here either are very interested and serious about starting a small business, or maybe buying a small business, or maybe already have some sort of business? So how many by show of hands? So just so I have some context here where, or maybe aspiring to do that, you know, serious about. Okay, so maybe half the group here. So that was not something that I necessarily planned on when I was maybe the age of several of you here. I grew up in a rural part of Alberta here, about 2 hours east of here, 2.5 hours, and had planned to go back. It was an agricultural, I grew up on a large farm, and it was kind of my plan to go back there. That was kind of what I thought I would do. And I guess you could call it a business of sorts, but maybe a little different than a business startup. So if you would have told me, 40 years ago that I would be doing that, I would not have thought that, but God has different plans. And what I would like to maybe share or present to you this evening might be a little bit different from maybe some of the other presentations that people would say, not that it's any better, just different maybe, but I would like to propose to you maybe a different reason for being in business than perhaps many people in, worldly side of things might promote or present as the reason for being in business. And so that really would be kind of the point of what I would hope to share with you this evening, and really just some maybe stories or examples of where I've seen God do that in my life, and maybe some things that would be helpful as you maybe consider where God might be calling each of you. I'm going to start with a story that would maybe be an anchor point for what I would share this evening, and it started, or the story took place in 2018, June of 2018, and as I mentioned, we manufacture electronic controls. So these would be touch screens, control panels, things that make your vehicles and boats work. So what you would interface with, keypads, touch screens, the black boxes that kind of maybe exist under the hood. So we design those products and we have them manufactured all here in North America. And most of our customer base is in the US, and their customers, or our customers, are people that would be the factories that are buying these things. So, you would recognize names like Winnebago and, maybe Jayco and things like that that are kind of in maybe the RV world. A lot of boat builders that are prominent boat builders would be using our product. And as I go through, you'll hear different examples of where our product is used. But this particular instance took place with the largest, one of our customers is the largest RV builder in the world. And they were using our product on several of their vehicles. But one vehicle line in particular, we have been having some issues, hearing some issues from the field of random things that would happen that weren't really intended. And again, our electronics control every aspect of the vehicle, from all the slide rooms, the lights, the heating and cooling, the things that you would use to monitor tank levels, and just all the aspects of the vehicle would be covered in our system. And there were some erratic things that were happening. And at one point it kind of came to a head where some of these slide rooms that you would see in a camper or an RV that extend out started moving on their own. And in one case, there was a child playing on the floor, and the slide room started moving and nearly crushed the child. And so this became instantly a very critical situation that had to be dealt with very quickly. We had been hearing of issues, as I mentioned, and so we had been trying to get to the bottom of it, and very quickly we had to determine what was causing this. And it was kind of, I think, providential the way God guided us to very quickly nail that down to what was happening. But I can remember like it was yesterday, the day that we had a phone call with the head leaders at, and I'm not going to name the name of the company, but the largest RV builder in the world, and it was top leadership that this call was with because of the gravity of the situation here. And they had basically outlined the concerns that they had. Not only was this a safety issue, this would affect sales because they couldn't sell vehicles that had a known issue like this. So they had to put a freeze on the sale of all these vehicles. Now, I mentioned the time of year. This is peak camping season, their top selling time of the year. And their mandate to us was, you have 1 week to fix this problem, or we will basically shut you down. You will be done. And so I can remember having that phone call with some of our leadership in the company. And when we hung up from that phone call, or Zoom call, it was a pretty somber group in that conference room. And I can tell you that as we realized not only the impact of potential lawsuits from people that had owned RVs and might face risk, there was also the reality that this largest customer could pretty much put us out of business. And we're at this point about 18 years in business. We had employees and a lot of stakeholders in terms of partners and suppliers and things like that were involved. So this became a very serious issue. So I can remember we had no idea what to do next, other than kneel down and pray. And so we gathered around that conference room table, there's about 4 of us there, and we just said, Lord, we have no idea what to do here, where to go, where to even start with something like this. We had understood that there was about 1,600 vehicles out there, all throughout North America, all over the place, that had to be addressed. And we had 1 week to do this, and that was it. And so we got up from our knees and, as we just really kind of started thinking what we could possibly do here, it was amazing how, and I'll just pause to say the issue when we found out was actually not something we had done. It was something we had subcontracted that was a mistake, a programming error, one little tiny error that was causing this issue. And so we could have said, it's their fault, this is not our problem and whatever, and there was all these kind of possible options that we were, was floating through our minds. But I want to just pause the story there and just say that, it would have been easy at that point to probably say, you know what, I think we're just done here. Let's just give up. This is a hopeless situation. I mean, by all outside purposes, how can you possibly cover the whole United States in 7 days to fix 1,600 vehicles all throughout the whole US? And so, that was kind of the natural tendency, was to just say, give up. But I will tell you that there were 2 main reasons, and this is what I would kind of use as my main points for the presentation today. 2 main reasons that I could not give up. That as our team reflected on this, we cannot let this beat us. So I'm going to put a pin in the story right there and just go maybe explain a few of the things that form the basis for what I'm sharing with you this evening. So, as I said, this was a startup business, started in actually 1999, officially incorporated in 2004, and started in our garage and basement. I was employed working for a company in town here that would build luxury vehicles. These were really fancy RVs that we would build out of a Greyhound type bus shell, and we would, build whatever the customer wanted. The fanciest interiors. They had these very elaborate budgets and things like that. And it was actually during my year here, summer, I guess, my first year taking business at Berman, that I started working there. And I enjoyed it so much, I worked there for 6 years. I just stayed on with them during that time, and it was a really neat opportunity to learn, tremendous opportunity. I mean, I had opportunities to learn here, working at the furniture factory and plant services and at the school shop. God was really providing those opportunities to learn as I was going through my education here, and I'll be forever grateful to Berman and PAA for the opportunities that I was given to work and learn those things while I was here. But I did learn a lot working for this company called Prairie Yacht. It was during my time there that I can look back and say God definitely was leading and had a plan for my life that summarized the point of what I'll try to say here, and that is no question in my life, or in my mind, when I look back on my life, it was when I surrendered my plans to God that He was able to lead in so many ways in my life. You see, at that point in my life, I was working, I was making a decent wage, working there, and as I looked back 4 years or so, maybe 5 years during my time there was one point where I was faced with the question that I had to answer, and that is, how has it worked out for you running your own plans the way that you wanted? So what I mean by that is, I was going to church, I was paying a faithful tithe, and that was what I thought was being a Christian. And I loved God, and I was wanting to live for Him, but that was over here, and my choices about how I spent my money, what I did with my time, my entertainment, my relationships, those were my decisions. And so I thought, I'll manage that, and God can, handle this. But I was confronted one day. I remember I went to work early that morning. I was at work at 4 a.m. It was dark, and I was just pulling up to the parking lot there, and as I shut the vehicle off, and this question came to me: how's that working out for you? You know, and I had to say, I had no money to speak of. Relationships were broken. I was wasting a lot of my time, and it would be the equivalent of social media today, perhaps. I mean, watching movies, music, all these kinds of things. And I had nothing to show for it. I had a lot of ideas and plans and aspirations, but they had gone nowhere. And I wondered, maybe God has a better plan than I do. And it was then that I just had opened the book of Proverbs. I had a Bible under my seat that I remembered had been given to me as a gift. And I just started there at 4 a.m., just in the parking lot, reading through Proverbs. And as I did that, I could see that God had a plan for our money and our time and our relationships. And I started to realize if God cared that much about it, maybe I can surrender and trust these things to Him. And so it was when I had realized that, and it wasn't instant, but as slowly I started to surrender my money and my relationships and my plans to Him, that within a year, God had totally changed the direction of where I was going. And it was pretty clear that God was opening the way, the doors that were open in terms of business, and I'll share a little bit about some of those opportunities that He had opened. But that was kind of that turning point in my life, and as I look back, there are so many examples of where maybe there's things I haven't surrendered to Him, and they haven't really gone that well. And then the things that I've surrendered to Him were clearly led by Him in so many ways. And so, the number one point I'm trying to make here is, you know, a business surrendered to God is a business that God can use. And when you surrender that to Him and you face challenges like the one I was describing at the beginning here, you know that God is going to have a way for you to get through that. And so it totally changes the way that you do business and the way that why you're in business, because you've surrendered this to God. If the decisions I made yesterday were surrendered to Him, the problems I might face today, I know are something I can also surrender to Him, and He will lead me through that. And so that was kind of, you know, something that I can say was a turning point. One of those defining moments in my life was that decision to surrender things to Him. And as I can say, I mean, I really look back on those next steps, and I can say, wow. I mean, I'm a farm kid from, you know, Eastern Alberta. How does somebody like that be able to start a business? I don't know anything about electronics. I'm not even an engineer. But how God provided the opportunity after opportunity when you surrender things to Him is just something I'm almost speechless to talk about as I think back on that. So it was, you know, I'm going to be paraphrasing a lot here, but there were, you know, so many opportunities then as I started now realizing that, hey, maybe I can use my time a little better. Instead of watching movies and listening to music and whatever, I could actually start maybe using that time to maybe start a business. And so what I did was, while I was working for my employer, they had all these things that needed to be built that they were buying or sourcing from other suppliers and kind of cobbling it all together. So I just started building that for my employer in the evenings instead of watching TV and wasting time doing other things. And that was kind of, the time that we have been given is something that everybody has. We all have the same amount of time in a day. You can say, well, you know, this person had it made because they, you know, their parents were rich or they had money or whatever. Well, that may be true, but the one thing we all have is time. And that was the first thing I learned was God has a plan for our time. And if we use our time wisely, God can bless that. So that little bit of time I'd have after work, I would use to build products for my employer, and that was the start of Spyder Controls. So I would build these things in the evening in my garage and basement, and then I kind of thought, maybe there's other companies that might need something like this, what I'm building for my employer. And so it was about this time, as I said, I surrendered my relationships, and it was not long after I met Julie, who's now my wife, and she was working in Florida, and so when I would go and visit her, I would visit some of the manufacturers that were doing this on a much bigger scale. And I would go there and kind of listen to what they were looking for, and kind of started to formulate an idea here. And so as I listened to what they wanted, I thought maybe there's an opportunity here to grow beyond just what I'm selling to my employer. And so it was at that point then that I kind of put together this little demo system. I'd been wasting most of my money up to that point, so I didn't have a lot of money to work with to start a business. But little bit I had, I put together this little demo system, and we were going to go and do our first sales trip. I wasn't even old enough to rent a car, so Julie, who was my girlfriend at the time, I was able to borrow her car and drove around. And we were gonna do this first sales trip in southern Michigan, northern Indiana. And I can remember, this is an example of where, just looking back, I mean, this kid that is too young to even rent a car, going into these big conference rooms to try and do a sales pitch, to try to convince them that they should, you know, consider this product. And I mean, I totally blew it. Like, went into this, you know, first meeting, and it was the most prestigious luxury coach manufacturer in the world. And I don't know how I even got an appointment, but it was actually an appointment with the president, and he listened, but he, you know, having a bit of arrogance perhaps because they were the best, he wanted to know if we were planning to sell this to other manufacturers. And as soon as I said yes, he said, there's the door, basically. I mean, a little nicer than that, but he basically said they weren't interested because they wanted something that nobody else had that was exclusive to them. So that was kind of hard because, you know, you hope that maybe you'd, and I had big visions of, you know, going on this sales trip. We had 4 big sales calls we were gonna make, and I felt that this was gonna be big time. You know, this was gonna be a big opportunity, and, you know, we'd have 4 new customers and we just build from there. And so this was one down and lost that one, or didn't really see much opportunity there. The second place we went, did my little sales pitch, opened my suitcase display here and showed him, and he was quite interested, but he said, you know, we're not quite ready to make a decision now, come back in a year or 2 and we'll maybe see if maybe we're in a better position to consider something like this. So that was kind of disappointing there as well. The third place I went to, they were interested in looking at it, but they were actually a little too interested. In fact, they wanted to look at how things were built behind the scenes and whatever, and it became fairly apparent that they were just looking to take those ideas and copy them. And so, you know, we quickly kind of ended that meeting and moved on. And now this is like, I'm batting, I failed for 3. I mean, I've struck out pretty much here, right? And so we had 1 sales meeting left, and I can remember getting up that morning, it was blizzarding cold in southern Michigan, and I was just praying, Lord, maybe they'll give me a job. Like, maybe I can just go there and ask for a job instead of trying to do a sales pitch and trying to sell my product. And it was just like, go and do the presentation and you know. And so I went and did the presentation. It was, again, the president of the company. He listened, he was very, asked good questions, and then he said, you know, I'm gonna call my sales manager in here, and I'd like you to kind of pitch this to him. By the end of that meeting, they had basically decided to take out the whole electrical system they were putting in one of the units they were building at that time, put our system in there because it was kind of their flagship unit they were taking to a big show coming up. And they wanted us to come and pitch the system at this show, and this was like the opportunity. I was that close to giving up, you know? But so there's a lesson there about don't give up, but there's also a lesson there that God gives small opportunities. It's not always gonna be like, you know, big time like we maybe would envision, and maybe, you know, you look at some of these big, you know, huge success stories in the world. It wasn't that way for me. It was these small opportunities, and it's something that goes back to something my mom wrote in my Bible when I was in high school, and it was this: God gives opportunities, success depends on what is made of them. And just think about that for a minute. And it's those small opportunities, those little things in life that we do faithfully, that then God can use to grow. And that was how it was in our business. There was these small opportunities. So here we had this one little customer, and it wasn't a big, you know, it was something, but it wasn't big volume. It wasn't really enough to quit my job and do this, you know, but it was something, right? And so, you know, in the evenings, putting this together, at this point now, my wife who's my wife now, had moved up to Canada. So we'd work on the evenings together in the garage on this, and we built our first few systems, and then our first system was sold the week after we were married. And I remember we couldn't even go on a honeymoon because we didn't have any money for one. But then, you know, we had to make good on this new opportunity and help have it installed and whatever. That was a whole other story. But anyway, and I wouldn't recommend that, by the way. But anyway, so that was kind of the small start, those little things. But I'm just going to say, like, so that God opened that door and provided that persistence. So looking back, I'm like, man, I can't even believe I did that. Like, that I don't know, like, who would do that? You know, this kid that really shouldn't have even been there, and how God, you know, opened the doors and gave those small opportunities. So now we have some business going, and there was, shortly after, 6 months later, there was another customer that came on. It was just slow little opportunities. But now I've got to actually start building some product here, and I had spent most of our money developing the product and hadn't really thought about how I was actually going to have the money to buy the parts to build product now. So I thought, no problem, I'll go to the bank, right? The bank is there for you, and the bank, you just go and get money, right? Like, that's how it works. So I went to the bank manager. I had a bank account there and had talked with him a few times, but I went there and pitched my idea. And, he listened attentively to my business proposal. It wasn't much of a proposal. It was just more or less, I need money. I've got some sales here and whatever. And I can remember like yesterday him leaning across his desk and just politely saying, there won't be any of our money that we'll be giving to you. And I just remember being crushed. Like, the bank is there for you, right? That's what they're there, is to loan money. And over the years I've learned, yeah, the bank is there, but they're usually there when you don't need them. And I hope nobody's a banker now. I'm not saying that in a bad way, but that is kind of how it works. The bank is there for those that have money or those that, are low risk. And the high risk, like me, just wasn't. So what it meant for me was now I had no money to really start, building product. But what God had to teach me was very careful management. And this is cash flow 101, okay? So you can learn all the stuff in school, but when it comes down to it, how are you gonna make this work from one week to the next? I didn't have any employees. My wife was working kind of, a job to kind of pay our expenses. I decided at this point to quit my job and try to really make this a go. And so there was, really no cash to do this, but there was a little bit. So it was just, okay, manage carefully the little bit that you have. And I would literally write on the calendar, okay, I'm gonna buy this here and here and here, and then I'm gonna, should be able to like see the payment for this system that we shipped out coming here, and just literally week to week, almost day to day, manage the cash flow. And that was how it had to start, because there was just no other options. And it was shortly after that, maybe 6 or 8 months, and my uncle saw the struggle I was going through, so he loaned me, $10,000, and that was kind of an interest loan. And, it was just those little things as I look back, like only God could have done and gotten me through kind of some of those challenges that I had. So it was still something that, we were basically not even, like I was not even making a wage. Like it wasn't even profitable at this point in the business. So we had an idea and it was catching on, but it really was not something you would call a business at that point. Still just working in the little garage there. Couldn't even rent the basement at that time. I just was renting the garage of the house we were in. But it was enough to get us started. But then we had the dot-com crash in 2001, and that kind of really slowed things down in the industry. So I was kind of, just as you're starting to get some momentum here, this happens. But there was one company that was doing really well, and I can remember somebody saying, you should go call on this customer. And so we did, and I can remember going into the presentation. Now we had a few products to show and a little bit, of experience, maybe a little bit. And I can remember going into the engineer's office, the head of engineering at this fairly large company now, and they totally blew the presentation. Like, I thought they were more of a entry-level builder, and I totally insulted them by kind of saying, well, you guys are, we can pare this down and make this kind of a little less expensive and whatever. And I just remember the smile on his face. And after I kind of was finished insulting him, essentially, he said, why don't you just come and we'll show you what we do here. And he showed me, and I was like blown away. I had no idea that they built these nice of a units, and I was kind of humbled by that. But in spite of that total sham of a presentation that I did, God moved on his heart, and he took me into the president's office, and he said, I think we want to take a look at this. Let's give him a shot. And that was our first big customer. That meant like Julie could quit her job. We could start, maybe hire one employee, and it was a big opportunity for us. And so I can remember, we can now start renting the basement and little set up some shelving and kind of got things really going. And then things were going well. Now this RV builder was again one of the larger ones, and had a lot of customers that were extremely wealthy. And I mean, we're talking the whole gamut of customers that you'd be dealing with, from music, singers, race car drivers, movie stars, like it was, everybody was kind of there, who's who, like huge business owners, it was the who's who of kind of, and so it was like, wow, you know, the opportunities here to, so we were about 8 months in business with them, and I can remember the phone call Monday morning. I went down to my office, to the little kind of desk there that I had in the basement, and getting this call from the head of service at this company, and they said, kind of like the scenario I just described at the beginning here, we had a pretty rough weekend here. We had 2 customers that called and they had some major issues, one of which made their almost billions off of the largest lawsuit in Oklahoma history, and they had a problem that his wife just about got hurt. And you can put 2 and 2 together right away that this could go bad really quick. And so they said, we need you to take care of this. There's every unit that's out there that's fixed, and it was at that point known what we had to do to fix the problem. And so what it meant was, at this stage in our business, where it's just me and my wife and one other, it was actually a Berman student that was working in our basement part-time. And so I had to now go around and, you know, they build 4 units a month. It wasn't huge, but these were like $2 million motorhomes, you know, per unit. And so I had to go around and fix every single one of them. I didn't have the money to buy tickets. I didn't have the time to be doing this because I'm the one building the product. And so it was what seemed like at the time the worst thing that could have happened to me. But at the same time, it was actually probably the most significant thing that God did in my life in terms of opening my eyes to what business success and his success looked like. So as I said, these were some of the most wealthy, some of the most successful people. These people defined the American dream. They were the people that, you know, had it all. They had achieved everything. And as I went, I can remember from place to place. You went in, I remember going to, it was one of the largest immobilizer companies, I'll just, without naming names, well, they are the largest, they are the name in Phoenix. And I can remember going into the compound there where their mansion was. I mean, it was just unreal. And you know, the lady, his wife, was so unhappy. Like, she was just complaining about this and that and everything. And I was just like, wow, these are the people that are supposed to be successful. Well, this was just the first of many. Every place I went to, so like at that time, the world's most famous NASCAR driver, you know, one of the most famous movie stars. It was just one example after another. Everybody that defined success was unhappy. It was just, I couldn't believe it. One of the biggest land developers out in Lower Mainland in BC, you know, owned one of the largest trucking companies, and you know, you'd get to spend time because it took about a day to fix this, you know, each unit. So, you know, you'd be there for lunch, they'd maybe, you know, and you'd get to talk with them. And it was just like God gave me this opportunity to just see into the lives of people that supposedly defined success. And it was just emptiness. And so I was like, okay, well, wow, is this what being in business is all about? Is this where it ends? And it can't be. I mean, there has to be a more fulfilling purpose for being in business. And so that really kind of opened my eyes, and I didn't know what to do with that exactly, but it kind of stuck in my mind. So we got through that problem. I will say this, that out of that lesson, not only did God teach me what worldly success looks like, but also what it means to take care of your customer. And in that experience, we've now, to this day, is our most loyal customer, and that customer, the motorhome builder, has brought more business to us because of referrals and things like that, because they knew that we would take care of the problem. We didn't push it off. This was another example where we had contracted the development of this product. It had a little mistake in it. And so it was just kind of like, so you can see now where, if we come back to that story I was talking about at the beginning, God had given me a much smaller scale lesson in taking care of the customer and doing the right thing and leave the results with God. If this is God's business, and this is something that I had surrendered to him before, not only in the decisions that were made, but in the way the money was spent and the way that the product was developed, then I know that if there's a problem that comes up, that I can surrender that to him as well. And I need to do the right thing and leave the results with him. And so that's what happened in that case. And it was amazing, even though I don't know where the money came from, only way as God could have provided it, but to buy the tickets, to have the time to do it, and to still keep the business going, he got us through that problem. So these were all just little examples that I'm sharing with you. I could go on here, but for the sake of time, I better keep going. But like the 2008 recession, 2/3 of our customers in 1 month bankrupt, completely out of business. The other third shut down, which was the customer I was just talking. They furloughed their production for 4 months. Owed us, not this customer, but all the others that went bankrupt, owed us a bunch of money. And you know, this is several years later now. We're obviously in 2008, 2009 when this took place. But huge like obstacles that God got us through during that time. That I look back and I say, God, only you could have done this. This is your business. And so, again, just to reinforce the point that a business surrendered to God is one that has meaning and purpose. And when we surrender those things to Him, no matter what problems we face, we know that because we gave yesterday's decisions to Him, that today's problems are something that He'll guide us through. So that's the one point I'd like to develop, is a business surrendered to God is a business that will be able to get through whatever it is that we encounter. The second part to that is, I knew that God had brought us through these things and had given us this business for something more than just worldly wealth or what the world would define as success. There had to be another purpose that God had given for us to be in business and the success that He had brought over the years than just to, what? Make money and buy another, like just do like all those people that I saw, where they had everything. I mean, the cars, the mansions, all the toys, jets, like everything you could want, boats, yachts, like everything. I mean, fame. And it was just, they were unhappy and empty. And I'm like, there has to be a more of a purpose to being in business and to having success. And so as we made it through the 2008 recession, and we had experienced quite a turnaround after the recession, because most of our competitors at that time didn't make it through the recession. They went bankrupt, and so when things kind of turned around, it was just like opportunity after opportunity to grow. And so that period of time between, say, 2012 to, you know, kind of COVID was just growth, like significant, year after year after year. And so I can remember in 2013, things kind of came to a point where I was like, you know, God is really blessed. There's a lot of headaches in running a business, and so I don't want to sugarcoat. There's like a lot of problems you have to deal with, a lot of things. It's much easier to do a 9-to-5 job. So if that's what you want, is ease and comfort, don't start a business, because that's not how it works. But that, you know, I'd gone through that, and I thought, you know, God, there has to be a reason that you've allowed this business to exist and to grow and thrive. And I you know, at that point, I kind of had thought that maybe, you know, God's purpose was just to pay a faithful tithe and just be a, you know, good church person, you know, be generous where you can, and just, you know, give money, essentially. And so I was kind of going through almost a midlife crisis at this point, because I really didn't know why I was doing this. Is this worth the headache? You know, it's not really worth it to me. I mean, at that point, you know, we paid off our house. We really didn't, you know, weren't worried maybe where our next meal was going to come from. What is the purpose for being in business? And so it was at this point that an uncle of mine, actually, the one that had helped me start the business, he loaned me his truck when I would go and do some customer visits. He lived in Texas, or lives in Texas, and had a concrete company, and he had a small plane. He'd fly me around to some of the places. But he kind of said to me one day when we were together at a family gathering, you know, you should really consider coming to ASI. And ASI is an organization that is kind of brings together Adventist business people, professionals, ministries, and things like that are lay people that are saying, Lord, I want to be more intentional about using my time, my money, the talents, resources, connections for your work. And I want to really be intentional about that. So I had no idea what this was about. He just said, you should come. And so our family went in 2013 to our first ASI convention. And we have never missed one since, as a family. I mean, our kids are grown up now. We go every year, and it's just a huge blessing to be able to come together and spend the time focused on mission. And so that was kind of a turning point in my life, where light bulbs started to come on, where it was like, wow, there's people here that are very successful, you know, business people, professionals, and different ministries, and they're all working together for one purpose. And you could see the joy in their lives, and it was like, wow, this might be what success from a, you know, why God has given us a business might look like. And so we went for our first year, second year, and there was so many opportunities. There's ministries there with exhibits that kind of show the work they're doing in different parts of the world. There's something for everybody there. If you have any kind of interest in anything ministry related, there's something for everybody there. If you're interested in, foreign missions, if you're interested in locals, how to, building churches or building schools or anything you can imagine, it's there in terms of ministry and helping others and serving. And so there was one booth in particular, AFM, that had a developer recruiter person there that was a missionary kid from Cambodia. He grew up there. He was, an American person, but he grew up in Cambodia as a missionary. And he said, look, you've got to come to Cambodia. He showed us pictures. And you could just see the joy in his face. And he and his wife were going to be moving there full time. And at one point, every year we'd say, we'll plan to go, but we never really intended to go. But one year in 2016, they said, please come, we're going to go. So, oh, sure, fine, let's just go. And I had no intention of ever going there again. It was just going to be to kind of see that part of the world and just whatever. But we went there, and again, for the sake of time here, I'm just going to maybe shorten the story. But it was hot. The food was different. The people are different language. Everything was so different. When we get there, we're tired and jet lagged. And we start going around. This is not like a typical mission trip where you're staying in a hotel or whatever. This was going all over the country of Cambodia, visiting people in their homes and sleeping in their homes and sleeping in these, like they kind of call them guest houses. And like it was just so different. And I can remember by Sabbath when it rolled around, I was tired and hot and just looking forward to a nap on Sabbath. We go to church. And they're speaking obviously in a different language. They don't sing like we do with the musical instruments. They have like karaoke, and they would play the words on the screen and just sing along. And the tunes are totally different. You don't understand anything. And then potluck after, everybody sits on the floor, and all the food is in the middle, and you just help yourself. Like they're all sharing just everything, and it was just like, oh. And so I was just looking forward to this being over, and then a nap that afternoon. And they had other plans, the missionaries. They served people in sort of a clinic they had. They were a doctor and a nurse kind of thing. And so they were going to go visit some of the people that had come to spend time, or had come to, get issues resolved. And so we went to this one, and I've shared this story several times, but this is kind of my conversion story, I guess, in terms of God working on my heart to have a heart for others. And so we go to this first house, and this guy, he's in the house there, sitting on the floor. The houses are up on stilts, and they're kind of slat floors with cracks in between. And he's got tuberculosis, and he's sitting there coughing and spitting, and he spit through cracks in the floor. There's this 2-week-old baby sitting beside him in a blanket there, and they're trying to, listen to his heart and just see how he's recovering and whatever. And tried to show him how to, cover up with a cloth, and gave him some hand sanitizer to use. And that lasted maybe 5 minutes, and he was back to doing what he was doing. And he was just, so enthusiastic that we had come to visit him and to spend time with him, because in their culture, if you're sick or something bad happens, it's because the spirits are mad at you. So to have somebody come and visit was so meaningful to him, because it meant that you cared, and even though maybe bad things were happening to you, that somebody cared. And so when we got up to leave, he was just so grateful, he wanted to shake each of our hands. And so he came and shook each of our hands, and I'm like, Lord, this is it. Now you brought us here to die. All of us have tuberculosis, and this is how it ends. And I was just like so mad at God, climbing down the ladder to put my shoes on, and we're just walking across to where the van is parked on the side of the road. And I'm just like, Lord, get me out of here. Like, this is it. I mean, the smell, I'm tired, like it's so different, and I'm just done. And there's these 3 ladies that walk across the road from the other side of the road coming toward us. And they came in their language, had said, we know that you know about Jesus. Would you come and tell us about Jesus? Come to our house and talk to us about Jesus. And it was like, whoa, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. But this is exactly what it was like for Christ coming to our earth. It was dark. You think of what it was like in heaven for him to come and save us, and like, when you think about what he gave up and what it must have been like for him coming to this earth, and here I am, I'm safe, I'm okay, and I want to go home. I don't have a heart for these people. And I realized, Lord, I need the heart that you had when you came to this earth, because I don't have that heart, and I need you to change my heart, because I don't have a love for these people, and I need that love that you have for them, and for all of us when we came to this earth. And it was just like another one of those defining moments in my life where God did that in my heart and gave us a love for that people, our whole family. So it was kind of the beginning for us of being in business with a purpose. It was during the next 3 years, 3.5 years. I'd been to Cambodia 12 times, and as a family we'd been there 8. Several mission trip groups we brought over, schools, training teachers, just helping set up different mission things, helping different ministries work together and be able to, establish a school or a church planting group or whatever. It was just, God had opened up so many opportunities to be involved there, and it would have been really hard to do that if you didn't have a business that could maybe be able to buy plane tickets and help maybe build a school and also take the time to do this. And so that was kind of the beginning of realizing a true purpose for being in business, was being able to have a mission and a purpose like this that was bringing such joy, and it seemed so opposite to what I'd seen when I went and visited. So, and I'm not saying that having money is bad or that the people that I visited were hopeless, but I could just see it wasn't bringing true fulfillment and satisfaction. And so that was kind of the beginning of a real turning point and a real purpose for being in business and having, it was an answer to prayer really that God had given. And so that kind of all took place, and I can say that, this kind of brings us back to our story here, where in 2018, we're facing this situation with this phone call from this largest motorhome company in the world, threatening to just wipe you out, and just thinking about, Lord, is this it? And as I look back and I reflected on, and I've just shared with you just a few of the, story after story of how God guided this person who didn't even know anything about electronics to have this business that designs electronics and became really the industry standard in the RV side of things, growing in the marine side. That only could have been God that did this, because there's no way I could have done something like that. So there had to be a purpose and a reason for that. And as we reflected as a group around that table on the different ways that God had guided our business over the years, we had to say we can't give up. God has a purpose here. We don't know how we're going to get through this, but we've got to start somewhere. So just coming back to that story where we gathered around that conference room table, it was just amazing, the ideas that within an hour had come together. So we're like, okay, what do we have? What can we do that would be at least a start to this, and at least show them some goodwill here that we're trying to do something. So we looked at this and said, okay, well, let's look at this on a map. So we had a list of all 1,600 motorhomes, and we kind of just plotted them out there on a map. So, okay, what if we have a distributor that was kind of the company that sold the product to, they did all the programming. They were actually sort of part of the problem, but we weren't pointing fingers. We were just saying, let's get this taken care of. So we said, okay, what if we work together with them? We split the country in half. Okay, so there's half. Then we started looking at, okay, what could we do to group certain areas? Everybody in the company is going to be involved in this solving this problem. Everybody. And so that's what happened. I mean, we had literally 2 days to figure out a strategy, get back to them, and then 7 days to fix the problem. And so as we kind of just split up the country like this, we had everybody in the team. This person went to this area, covered this for 7 days, and this person went to this area and covered this 7 days. And then we had a small plane, so we got in the plane and we just planned it out, like we'll do 3 cities a day. There was 4 of us in the plane would land, we'd get out, we had rental cars lined up, we just boom, boom, boom. It was just amazing. God provided great weather. At the end of 7 business days, and understand that this is during the July 4th long weekend, okay? So it was like on top of it. So we didn't work on Sabbath, we did everything we could, and in 7 business days later, we were in the headquarters of this largest motorhome builder in the world, in Indiana, and we reported to them the whole list of motorhomes was taken care of. Wow. It was an absolute miracle, and we were able to testify of how only God could have helped us through this. And it was just an absolute, but it was the purpose for being in business that I think got us through that. when we had seen in the past how God had led time after time after time, and that God has a purpose for this business, it was that pushed us through to be able to do that. Well, since that time, there have been several other challenges that God has brought us through. But again, it comes back to, what is the purpose for being in business? Has this business been surrendered to God? And is that something that will get us through the next challenge? I'll just explain a few of them. We went through COVID, and there was obviously several challenges and uncertainty during that time. What seemed like was the worst thing that could have happened, because I can just say in like a period of a month, as many of you know, I mean, if you were in school, you were probably back at home. Like, all your plans had to change, and it was kind of like that with us. But basically, we were shut down for about 2 months. I mean, nothing happening, and just complete uncertainty of how this was going to play out, where you were going to go. You have liabilities you have to pay. We're more established at that point, so we can weather some of those storms. But then it kind of did the opposite for us. It was exactly, everybody couldn't be traveling internationally. They kind of had to stay at home, so everybody wanted to buy an RV or a boat. So within, like, literally a 2-month period, it was like just the opposite. And it was like, we've never seen demand like that ever, and it was just crazy, and it was everything we could do to keep up. But what this did, as you may recall, was create a bit of a supply chain crisis. So we, within a very short period of time, went from no orders to more orders than we could handle, and now no parts to build those orders. So never before had we had such demand, but we had no supply. And you can, supply and demand, so what happens when there's no supply? The prices go up, and so now you have all this business, but now you're losing money almost building the product, because the parts to buy them cost so much more. Anyway, it was just an absolute nightmare. And I can tell you that, and during that time, it actually came to a point where there was one particular component that was common to almost every product we built. It was one of the largest chip manufacturers in the world that we buy this part from. And we were told that you will not be getting any more of this part for 6 months. And for us, again, we're supplying factories. So this isn't like, okay, well, Walmart won't have a product to put on the shelf. What we're supplying is absolutely core. It's the brain, it's the central nervous system of every boat and vehicle that our product is on. So this meant they're not building anything. So as we started to kind of navigate through the potential gravity of this situation, we actually kind of did the math, and it was going to be 30,000 people that would be without work, not that are Spyder employees, but that wouldn't be able to work, like that are our customers, because you just cannot retool and switch to somebody else's product. Like, it's their wire harnesses, their whole vehicle is built around this. So it would have meant a minimum of 6 months for them to retool, reharness, retest, and then be able to get back into production. So 30,000 employees that would have been affected, $800 million a month in revenue that would be lost. And I can remember driving home that night when we got that news, and just the whole weight of this kind of, much less our business and our employees, but just the impact that we were going to have on others, and the trust that they had put in us to be able to deliver product. And it was just like, Lord, this is way beyond me. And so what do? I mean, we just prayed, brought it before the Lord. We're like, well, let's appeal to the chip builder, the manufacturer that was, allocating parts and saying you're not going to get any more for 6 months. I mean, what do we have to lose? So we did this very compelling video that we did, and wrote a very very convincing letter, or whatever we thought. And I just sent it literally to the president of this largest company in Italy, and had no idea if it would ever get there, if anybody would ever. And so this is now nearing Christmas of 2021. And it was Christmas Eve that I got a call and an appointment from the president of basically all the Americas of this company. And he was supposed to be doing his Christmas shopping. And I can remember it like yesterday. It's Christmas Eve, and we have this call with him, video call with him. He said, I saw the video, we've considered the situation, and we're going to give you the parts that you need to get through the next, 6 months. Like a total miracle. I mean, who are we? Like, we're this little company in Lacombe, and God opened the door for us to be able to, get, I guess, mercy and grace from these guys. And that was just the beginning. That was the beginning of literally, I started actually prayer journaling because it was every single day there would be one more miracle of a part we couldn't get, and this was going to be shut down, and how God intervened. We maybe had to redesign, or we had to shift, and we're always having to, but God always provided what was needed. And so it was just, you know, again, another example, and I know there's going to be many, many more challenges that we're going to face as a company, and everybody is going to be facing those things, but again, surrendering your business or your life, career, professional, whatever, to God, you know that if you surrender those decisions to Him today or yesterday, you know that whatever problems today or tomorrow have, that you can trust with Him. And then having a purpose. Why am I doing this? What is it that God has given each one of us? Talents and abilities and resources, time. How can you, if you surrender those things to Him, how can He use them for something that's going to be doing a greater good than just maybe what would we call the American dream? Yeah. Not that that's bad, and not that we shouldn't have our needs provided for and things like that, but there is a bigger purpose for what He's given us and how we can do that. And so that's what I would like to challenge each of you with, to maybe just consider, what is it that God has called you to do, and is it something that you're willing to surrender it all to Him? So. Yeah, there's a lot more I could share, but I think our time is up here, so we'll maybe wrap it up.
Thank you very much. Now it's time to see if we have just a few minutes to take a few questions from anyone. I see Aaron's hand, right?
What company did you work at before Spyder Patrols?
So it's called Prairie Yacht, so it was kind of like a yacht that goes on land. It was kind of, so they were here in town. They're not here anymore, but the building is still there. It's kind of just across the railroad tracks there. They decided to move.
Other questions? No? So, let me ask for one. Jesse Ann? No. So you were telling us there are no such things as straight A's and business experience. You're not going to go have score A's all the time.
You're saying if I was that way, or?
No, can I take that from your presentation?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which is that there are a few F's along the way.
Yes. Yeah, I would say, so my decision to maybe continue, I didn't finish my business degree here at Berman. Instead, I continued working for this company.
Okay.
So what it meant for me, though, was instead of going to the School of Business at Berman, I went to the School of Hard Knocks, which I'm still in. But I would suggest that anybody going into business is probably going to go through a similar extended education.
Okay. All right. So before you start, you ask the questions. How many people here are planning to open a business or running a business?
Seriously.
Do we have, by show of hands, do we have the same number of hands?
Few less.
Okay.
Well, I hope I haven't discouraged you. It really is amazing to be able to, you know, have a purpose.
This is an interesting learning, though, good learning. Your malady in life and this experience. So do not expect straight A's in life. Or it's a lot of it, but along the way there are
Absolutely.
a lot of lessons from failures as well for this. Yeah, good. All right, I see Rihanna here with a question. Maybe the last, before last. Yeah.
It's not really a question. I tend to learn even after, like when I think about what I heard. So I just wanted to say thank you, because there was a lot that I think I wrote down that I will be using also in the future that I don't realize I need yet. So I think there are a lot of seeds planted, and I think I can speak for a lot of people. So thank you for sharing it. Thank you for your emphasis on how God played a big role in that. I think we often forget. We separate Him a lot from work, school aspect. It's great to worship and go to church, but when it comes to my studies, I have to focus on that. That's for me to happen. And when we separate that, we limit the power and reach we can have and give Him the glory there.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Okay, so the last question? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a question. So I remember you mentioned that there was this one client that came that was so big that your wife was able to quit her job. And I just wanted to ask, like, how long did it take, it's like in a timeline for, since you started the company until you actually made like a substantial amount of profit that you were able to like just I guess, fully like rely on it as a source?
Sustainable,
Yeah.
is that maybe, how long was it till you were sustainable?
Yeah.
Is that- yeah, it's about 3 years, I would say, from that point. I wouldn't even count the first couple years where I was still working and just kind of, you know, selling stuff to my employer. I'm not really counting those, but from the time that I like quit my job and decided I was gonna make this a go, and then my wife was able to quit her job, I'd say that span was about 3 years.
Thanks for the answer.
Okay, and the very last? All right.
So if you had to start over,
Mhm.
what's the thing that you'd do differently?
Good question, wow. Well, okay, so as it turns out, and we're out of time here, but, so, you know, started Spyder Controls and things got to a certain point, COVID happened, so I couldn't be doing a lot of the stuff in Cambodia and other parts of Southeast Asia that I was doing. So we actually had the opportunity as we had some missionaries that were staying with us in our home, and they were wanting to go back into the mission field and serve, and they had nowhere to go, no organization to help. They were mission pilots. And so what I'm trying to say is we ended up starting another business of sorts, a mission organization from scratch in our basement, just doing it 25 years later, and it's called Angel One. And so we've had to do kind of a startup again, and there have been a lot of things I've done differently, you know, maybe in terms of some of the risks you take, and maybe some of those you take are different because you maybe have the capital to do so. So it's hard to put yourself in that position again and say what you would do different. I would say probably, probably would have been a little more intentional maybe about reaching out during some of those financial challenges. I thought there was no other options, and there are other options. Maybe would have been a little more intentional about that. Would have maybe handled things a little differently in the 08 recession, for sure. How I kind of just hoped this was gonna pass and kept employees on and spending money and whatever, and you know, we had to make some adjustments there when you have no. So I'd never gone through something like that, but at the same time, maybe I would say realizing the importance of building a good team. I didn't really learn that until later on, and you know, that's super important, is building a good team and having excellent people that can do. But yeah, it's hard to say, I don't know, I'd have to really think about that more. I'm just kind of sharing a few things, but maybe a few of those would do.
Yeah.
All right, so Curtis, on behalf of the School of Business student body, I would want to thank you again for sharing those business insights. I learned a lot myself. We never stop learning. So I would like to ask the audience again to join me in thanking Curtis for such a collaboration will continue. So on behalf of the School of Business, we're presenting a small gift here
Okay, well, thank you.
to you. So thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Continue the collaboration.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, for coming out and joining us.